I'm gonna read the Wheel of Time. I'm gonna have a really good time. I'm gonna read the whole series. There's gonna be no negativity. New spring through the memory of light. I know that I've read it once or twice. I'm pretty sure that didn't even rhyme, but we're still gonna have a good time. Hello, Wheel of Timers. Welcome back to my videos. I am rereading The Wheel of Time book by book, and each book will be a video. We are tackling The Wheel of Time by Robert Jordan and Brandon Sanderson, who helped write the last 3 books of the series. Today's video is going to be on New Spring, which is the prequel to this entire series. And we're going to just jump right in. Here we go. I have some notes over here, so if you see me looking over there, that's what I'm looking at. Alright, the book starts with a guy called Lan Mandragoran. Lan Mandragoran is from a place called Malkier. Malkier no longer exists because it was consumed by something called the Blight. The Blight is like, think of a forest, and then if the forest was just consumed and became this like dead zone, that is the Blight. And the Blight is slowly creeping towards the mainland. And Malkier was way, way north, and so the Blight was like... And so that is what's happening. So Lan is walking around camp, making sure his soldiers are awake. He's part of this thing called the Aiel War. The Aiel are a people who live in the waste, which is a desert. And something has brought them down into the mainland. And they are waging war. And so basically he gives a little bit of background, Lan, about Malkier. He's joined by a man named Bukama. And this guy from Tyr shows up. He's a lord in charge of the army. He's like, you guys go over here. We're going to start this fight. They go over there. The guy who's from Tyr, he's very rude. Basically, Lan is like, I'm going to beat his ass. But then he stays calm. They get to the area and realize that there are no reinforcements. And there's a lot more Aiel than the guy from Tyr told them about. And they're probably going to die. But when the Aiel see Lan, they start shouting, Analine! And then they all leave without even fighting. And Lan is like, who the F is Analine? It's Lan. Alright, so we're in the White Tower. And there are 2 accepted, Moraine and Swan. And they are attending the Amerlin seat, who is called Tamra Ospenia. And Tamra Ospenia, the Amerlin seat, has a second in charge, like an assistant manager, and she's called Gitara Morosa. They are from the Blue Aja, or they were before they were raised up to the Amerlin seat and the Keeper of the Chronicles. Moraine and Swan are accepted. That means they have not become Aes Sedai just yet. So they're attending the Amerlin seat. Moraine knows that Gitara Moroso has the talent called foretelling. That's where she can see the future and she foretells it. And she's like, I hope maybe one day I get to see somebody foretell something. So anyway, she gets her wish. Gitara foretells the birth of the dragon reborn. Remember in the last video, we said Luther and Telamon went crazy and killed everybody, and then he turned into a mountain. And he was called the dragon. And the prophecies say the dragon is going to be reborn. And so Gitara is like, oh, honey, stop the press. I have some tea to spill. She said the dragon takes his first breath on the slopes of Dragon Mount, and I'm dead. So Gitara Moroso dies. Right there, she just dies. Tamra Ospenia is like, oh no girl, not now, this is not the time. And so she's basically like, Moraine, Swan, don't you dare tell anybody about this. Also, I'm putting you in charge of finding the dragon reborn. Basically, she says, okay, I had this wonderful idea. I'm going to send all the accepted, because all the Aes Sedai are out helping in the war. And she's like, there's no Aes Sedai in the White Tower. So she's sending the accepted, who are kind of like, the novices are the kids, the accepteds are the teenagers, the Aes Sedai are the adults. Not exactly that, but that's the mentality that they have. So she's like, all the accepted will leave the tower and go find any woman who has given birth in this specific time period, and we'll give her 100 gold crowns. Of course, everybody's like, 100 gold crowns? I had a baby. And so Moraine and Swan are tasked to go do this with the other accepted. They have to write down the names, basically like, who are you? What do you do? And then where did you have your baby? And then what they're looking for is women who had their baby on the side of Dragon Mount, the slopes of Dragon Mount, or something like that. So the prophecy will basically tell them who the Dragon Reborn is if they can find this woman. They do not find her, but they do find out that Moraine's uncle, King Laman, who started the war with the Aiel, has died. The Aiel are leaving back to the Aiel Waste, and they're basically like, who do you think is going to become the next monarch of Cairhien? Very much hinting that they want it to be Moraine. So they take Moraine and put her back in the tower. They're like, look, here's a bunch of names that everybody's written down, and we can't even read them, so make sure that you write them down in a legible, style. And Moraine is also writing them on the side so she can go hunting. Tamara Ospenya is found dead. Oh no! And the person who replaces her is this lady, Siren Vayu. Siren Vayu is a mean, mean lady. And she was raised up from the gray Aja, but a lot of people were like, ooh, she should have been red Aja. Basically, her second in command is red Aja, and that's unheard of. If you get raised from the gray Aja, you have to find some gray Aja to get raised with you. And she said, I don't think so. We're going to go with the red Aja after all. She tells Moraine, listen, you better not go anywhere because we're going to make you the queen of Cairhien. And Moraine, who is now an Aes Sedai, is like, I don't really have to stay, I'm an Aes Sedai, so she leaves. And we switch back over to Lan, who shows up in a place called Kandor. Bukama is with him. They find out that this Lady Eden, I think it's Eden. Lady Eden Arel, she has been going around preaching the gospel of Lan. And basically, she was the first person that Lan had sex with. Lan was 15 years old. Lady Eden was 30 at least. So that was scandalous. Escandalo! And that makes her his carniera, which means that in some cases, she has some pretty big authority over him because she was the first person that he banged. Anyway, Lan's like, I'm gonna go head over to this place called Chechen. And so he heads over there. 3 months have passed. Moraine finds herself trying to go through this list, and she cannot find the Dragon Reborn for her life. She ends up in a little town. She runs into some people in Kandor. Who else is in Kandor? That's right, Lan. She runs into some Aes Sedai, though, and they don't really recognize her. So basically, they think she's just a lady who can channel. And she's like, I don't want to go to the one tower. And they're like, all right, we'll leave you alone. But Mirian Sedai and Laurel Sedai show up, and they do know Moraine. So they're kind of like, well, it's really customary not to interfere with what Aes Sedai are doing outside of the one tower. So they're kind of like, we know who you are, but we're going to let you keep your secret. However, another lady shows up. Her name is Cadsuane Malydrin. Cadsuane is the oldest living Aes Sedai. She's also a very powerful channeler. Way more powerful than Moraine or anyone else, for that matter, at this time in the book. Foreshadow. Anyhow, Cadsuane is known for, she's Green Aja, and she is known for just not really caring about the rules. And basically she's like, Moraine, Mirian, Laurel, into this room, please. And so they take her into the room. She's like, tell me about Moraine. Mirian and Laurel spill the tea. They were like, Moraine and Swan were like that, honey. And Moraine is devastated. She's so mortified. Basically, Cadsuane is like, listen, you're not going anywhere. You're really in over your head. You don't even realize it. I'm going to check on you tonight. If you're not in your room, I'm going to spank you and you can cry on your shawl. So she goes, Swan shows up and meets Moraine. She tells her that all the searchers for the Dragon Reborn have been killed. That includes Karenni, Malin, Aisha, Ludice, Valera. All of them are dead. And so basically they realize, well, whoever killed them did it with the one power. That probably means the Black Aja. There are 7 Ajas, I believe. Blue, white, brown, yellow, gray, green, blue, white, red, yellow, green, brown, gray. Right? Anyway, there's 7. And there's an 8th. Aja, called the Black Aja, that nobody talks about because they cannot believe it could be possible, but there are Aes Sedai who are dedicated to the Dark One. They are called the Black Aja. Anyway, Moiraine determines that these are the people who probably killed all these people, but they don't know that Moiraine and Swan are also searching for the Dragon Reborn. And so Cadsuane is kind of, I think she's kind of in the know, so she's like, you're messing with the hornet's nest, honey, you better watch out. So anyway, Moiraine flees again. She shows up in a place called Chechen. Who's in Chechen, by the way? That's right, Lan Mandragoran. So Lan shows up at the palace, and the Lady Eden is there. She's like, hey, remember how I had sex with you? And so basically I want you to marry my daughter. And Moiraine shows up and she's like, I'm just going to become the Lady Moiraine de Modred because that means I can walk into the palace. And she goes and meets the prince. And she's kind of like, cool. And the prince is like, oh yeah, I think the prince's son Derek is like, yeah, Lan Mandragoran is here. And she's like, oh really? And then he's like, yeah, he's the uncrowned king of Malkier. Moiraine is not okay with that. She does not like that at all. So she goes back to her room, and on the way she runs into Mirian Sedai. Mirian Sedai and Laurel Sedai were supposed to be walking together, and all of a sudden Laurel can be nowhere to be found at all. So Moiraine thinks that maybe Mirian is Black Aja and she killed Laurel. We will find out if that is true or not. Very, very crazy. She and Swan are trying to find this Lady Ines, who might possibly be the mother of the Dragon Reborn, who is in the Aedashar Palace. Basically, they find out that it isn't her, obviously. But there's this really weird thing, and she's like, I'm gonna go find Lan. So she finds Lan, and she's like, hey, can you please help me keep an eye on Mirian Sedai? And Lan is like, I will help you if you tell me why the White Tower didn't send any Aes Sedai at all to help us when Malkier was falling to the Blight. And Moraine's like, look, I'm not even allowed to say this, but here's the tea. We tried. The White Tower tried, and they did not get there in time. But instead of letting the world know that we did not get there in time, it was much better for the White Tower just to make it look like we didn't even try. And that's the answer. And Lan's like, well, I guess I'll help you out then. So he goes to keep an eye on Mirian Sedai, and Bukama is also trying to keep an eye on Mirian Sedai. So what happens is that Lan realizes, like, the one power is used to try to throw him down some stairs, but he survives. And then he finds out that Bukama has been killed, and then he realizes, oh my god, Mirian is not a good lady. So he runs to Moiraine. Moiraine is with, actually, I think right before that, Moiraine was talking to the Lady Eden's daughter, who's kind of like, I want to go to the White Tower. She's very rude. She's very spoiled. She's a noble woman, or a noble girl anyway. Moraine's like, I don't care. Get out of here. And so she has Swan throw her out. And so then all that happens with the stairs and stuff. And so Lan shows up. He's like, hey, this happened. Moiraine is like, it must be true. Mirian is, in fact, Black Aja. We need to go help them now, because she finds out that Mirian took Isel with her, and she's trying to find the little Prince Derek. Now, the reason is because Prince Derek fell down some stairs or something, or fell off a bridge, or I don't know what. Anyway, he didn't get hurt at all, and Lan is also considered a very lucky man. So that indicates that they might be able to channel, because sometimes men who can channel, or people who can channel, have these sort of things happen around them with no explanation before they learn how to control the one power. And so she's like, Mirian must think that little Derek is the Dragon Reborn. So they run across the palace. They find her on this walkway. We find out that Rhine, who was another Malkiri who was with Bukama and Lan, he is a dark friend. He's been working with Mirian. Mirian is Black Aja. It turns out she did kill Laurel. Anyway, so they start fighting, and they realize, okay, so Mirian thinks that one of these people is the Dragon Reborn. And so she lifts up Prince Derek in the flow of air and throws him off the palace, and then she lifts up his father and throws him off the palace, and all the while she's fighting Moiraine, and this guy Rhine is fighting with a sword Lan. And so Moraine is strong, but Marion is stronger, even though Moraine one day will be stronger. She has not reached her potential yet. So she's just fighting for her life. Just weave, weave, spirit, spirit, fire, fire, earth, earth, whatever. It's not working. Basically, Marion, while she's fighting, is like, oh, by the way, I'm also going to be lifting these people and tossing them off the bridge or the palace walls. So Derek is dead. Prince Bryce is dead. She starts to get Iselle up into the air. She hits Moraine with some kind of crazy white light weave. Moraine is like, oh no, I'm defeated. But she's like, I have to save Iselle, and so she takes a dagger. You can shield me from the one power, but you cannot shield me from this knife. And she throws herself, she stabs Marion. Marion dies. Because Marion's holding the one power, she dies and the weaves disappear. And Iselle is like, here's the... She's like, oh no! And Moraine comes up, she's like, I got you, but her hands are all super bloody, and she's like, oh, and I don't got you after all. And so Iselle falls to her death as well. They go back to Moraine's room, and Swan is like, uh-oh, everybody's dead, we gotta get out of here. Moraine also destroys Marion's body and cleans up the mess, because they don't really have proof she's Black Aja, and all of a sudden, a lot of the royal family is dead, so she needs to get out of there. So she leaves. She's like, look, Marion killed Derek. She thought he was the Dragon Reborn. This tells me that the Black Aja knows that the dragon is reborn, but they do not know whether he has been reborn yesterday or 10 years ago or 20 years ago. They just don't know. And that gives Moraine and Swan an advantage in finding the Dragon Reborn, gives them a little bit more time. So Moraine bonds Lan as her warder. She sends Swan back to the White Tower to gather information and keep an eye on things. And then Lan and Moraine set off to continue the search for the Dragon Reborn. And that ends the prequel New Spring by Robert Jordan, which is the prequel to The Eye of the World, which is book 1 of the Wheel of Time series. That is the next video we're going to get into. I enjoyed this book. I thought it was great and well written, and it really gave us a little bit of insight into some of the characters that we do get to learn about later on in the series. It was fun to watch them kind of in the before, and to see how they have changed and how they've developed over time. So that is New Spring. I hope you enjoyed this video. Follow along as we continue on with book 1, The Eye of the World, and we will be seeing that video coming up pretty soon. Bye guys.